What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to, I would say this is the bonus episode, but it's not really. I would say the previous episode is a bonus episode. But this is Batman News Weekly number 9. If you're curious about how you missed number 8, it actually got uploaded on Wednesday. So if you didn't listen to that, you might want to go listen to it because it's me and Fanboy Clay's Joker review of the Joker movie. We talked about it for almost like 50 minutes. So I uploaded that on YouTube. But of course, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or anything, you can go ahead and just go back and listen to that if you missed it because it wasn't uploaded on the normal time. So yes, this is Batman News Weekly number 9. If you want to listen to number 8, the Joker review, definitely go check that out. But in today's episode, it's going to be comics heavy. There was like 11 different titles for Batman stuff happening this week. It was insanity. But we're going to go ahead and start off the podcast with some really big future DC news that me and Clay have a lot of opinions on. But I'm going to let Clay take the lead on this because he's researched it way more than me. So Clay, let us know what's happening with DC.
All right, so the big thing that happened over the weekend on New York Comic Con was, because I'll be honest, a lot of people were hoping that we would get a lot of announcements to get prepped for 2020. There would be a lot of good news. Oh, I'm looking forward to this book, looking forward to that book, looking at which writers are going to be on whatever book. We didn't get any of that whatsoever. The only announcement that was worth anybody's time was the announcement that Dan Didio and Jim Lee had that they are officially making a new timeline for DC Comics. And you would ask, okay, well, isn't there already a timeline? Yes, but it's very convoluted with a whole bunch of continuities. Now, what this new timeline is going to do is going to take all those continuities, all of those timelines, and put them all in one streamline, basically setting everything in stone. Now, when I first heard this, I thought that sounds like a really big mess, but the more and more me and Juice were talking about this needed to happen in some sort of capacity, so that way writers, editors, artists, whatever, anybody who works for DC has basically a DC Comics Bible and says, hey, this is what's going on. And so that way, if anybody has any questions, look at the timeline. This is what you need to, look at when you're wanting to mess with Batman, mess with Superman, mess with Static Shock, any of those random characters. The only problem with that is a small little rumor that is coming up that we will talk about here shortly. I just want to give a little bit more info on this timeline. So the one who really broke the news after the announcement was a Hollywood Reporter, and they interviewed Dan Didio. So these are some of the quotes that Dan said over the panel and, just explaining why they decided, hey, we really need a timeline. So Dan Didio came to say that for the first time, we're going to introduce a DC timeline, saying that the whole idea here right now is from our standpoint, we're trying to organize a sense of when the DC stories took place and how they will fit together. So the arrival of Superman, Kingdom Come, Infinite, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Identity Crisis, Flashpoint. These are the big points in time, really, people are wanting to know, especially DC is wanting to know, hey, what should we do with these points in time? How should we look at them? So he was saying here that in regards of the reboot, in the wake of the reboot of 2011's New 52, he said, what might have slipped up was we didn't spend enough time to figure out what worked in continuity. Now, I understand that, but technically, New 52 was a complete reboot, so at that point you didn't have any continuity. The only problem with that is when they wanted to make New 52, they decided, hey, our two biggest selling comics is Green Lantern and Batman, so I don't think we should mess with those. And that's what really messed with the idea of a reboot, when technically you had 5 years of both Batman and Green Lantern still set in some sort of continuity, rather than all the other heroes, not being in the universe 5 years prior.
Yeah.
So things got a little messy and murky, and they tried to fix things throughout the New 52, and ultimately that's what got us to Rebirth. This is where the new rumor comes in. We heard this thing called 5G. Well, what is 5G? Well, in this article,
it's not the mobile service.
Yeah, no, it's not what you get when you go out of roaming if roaming is even still a thing anymore. Dan was explaining that there are generations of the timeline here. So there is the dawn of the heroic age, there is the space age, the age of crisis, and then the flashpoint era. So those are 4 generations. So I'll explain a little bit about which ones those are. Dawn of Age is the arrival of Wonder Woman in man's world before the Second World War. Space Age, which begins with Superman's debut, and the Age of Crisis, which spans the period between 1985 Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Flashpoint in 2011. And then everything else is post Flashpoint.
Yeah.
Basically what we are in now. We talk about this to talk about the rumor of this 5G. Now, this has been coming out of Bleeding Cool. Now, we've talked about Bleeding Cool before, about the rumors of Black Batman. They're the ones that broke the news on Tom King leaving the Batman title to make a Bat-Cat book. So
yeah, they have an okay record in
honestly
breaking things.
Bleeding Cool was a site where I usually rolled my eyes whenever I saw them. But until that Tom King article came out, then I started to see, oh, okay, they have new sources, new legitimacy, so I'm going to take their stuff with an actual grain of salt instead of just chalking it up to, oh, they just want clicks. Yeah. So this new 5G rumor is that the assumption that with this new timeline, they are actually aging these heroes. The ones that we always thought were immortal, that were...
the ones that have been for 80 years.
Yeah. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Hal Jordan, all those characters, they're going to legitimately age them to their appropriate ages, which means that Superman and Batman are going to be in the age range of anywhere from 60 to 75 years old. Wonder Woman, like we had talked about before we were recording, she's immortal, technically. So I'm not sure how that's really going to affect her. But other humans, let's say like Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, let's say, I keep throwing him out there, but Static Shock, Black Lightning, all these other heroes, what happens to them? They get older as well. Well, what does that leave? That leaves our younger heroes of this time to be older as well, to be the new heroes. That's one of the bigger rumors right now, is that they're going to age up Jonathan Kent again to him be the new Superman. This also lines up to possibly Luke Fox being the new Batman. Possibly.
Yeah. Which is weird.
Yeah.
Because he's not... I would say he's like Dick Grayson's age.
Yeah.
So, again, why isn't Dick Grayson Batman?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So...
is that the gist of it, pretty much? Like, we're going to get this new generation?
The new generation, but also this 5G, because the 5th generation is going to be completely new heroes that none of us have ever heard of, that are going to come in, and that's going to be the new face of DC. We're going to do something brand new. And honestly, this is exactly what Marvel did about 5 years ago, called Marvel's All New, All Different. And within a year and a half, they went to Marvel All New, and then a year after that, they went to Marvel Fresh Start, and that's where they're at today. This is what's going to inevitably happen to DC, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for the last few days because it was weird, because if you guys have noticed this, I want to say it was episode like 2 or 3, we talked about Black Batman on this. And we were like, how's this going to work? It's not going to make any sense because you have freaking like 5 Robins in the wings. Why wouldn't any of them? Why even Batgirl wouldn't even become the next Batman over somebody that's not even in the current things? And if Black Batman was going to be anybody, it should be Duke Thomas, who they were saying the rumors weren't going to be him. Now, I think we went from bad to worst. Not only were we just thought we were gonna get a random ass Black Batman character that
we're getting brand new, we're getting
everybody,
brand new everybody,
yeah. And I remember seeing that Marvel stuff and being like, thinking it was cool because it felt like Marvel was really trying to do like be inclusive and do a lot of like diversity stuff. But at the same time, as somebody who loves diversity and wants to see more of it, I do think, I know some people are like, you don't agree with this when it comes to the movies. Movies are different than comic books. Comic books come out every week, and you can actually build a story there. Movies come out once every like 3 to 5 years, and so you can't really build stories like that. I mean, it took 10 years for them to build to Thanos in freaking the MCU. So building up like diverse characters like that, sometimes it's just easier just to pull the Band-Aid off. Let's just recast him in a diverse character. Bada bing, bada boom. You deal with it. But when it comes to comic books, in that realm, I think you build a story. You bring in the Black Batman character now. You build it for the next year and a half or whatever. Then he becomes Black Batman. But this seems like they're going to be like, no. We're going to give you a whole fucking new universe. And it's just like, what? Because I remember that Marvel stuff, it looked cool, but it was too much too fast.
Well, and here's the thing, and this won't happen to DC because thankfully DC owns majority of the characters that are very classic. I kept referencing to Static Shock. Technically, DC right now is kind of in a battle with using him, so they just refuse to use him, so that way the creator of Static Shock doesn't be like, oh, you owe me money now. So what Marvel did, they threw a lot of shade towards Fox for owning X-Men and the Fantastic Four. So
they canceled the books.
So
right?
those characters were canceled as far as books, and like the Thing was the only character that they kept.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
didn't they kill the whole cast in a comic book?
No, they killed the cast of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
In a Punisher book. Yeah,
it
was horrible. It was
super.
It was funny, but it was horrible.
Yeah,
but
Marvel does a lot of shade like.
Oh that. They don't hold back when it comes to stuff like that. They're very petty like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yet you can't show Princess Leia in a slave bikini outfit. So stupid. We'll be petty as hell, but we can't do bikini stuff.
But one thing that I told Juice literally right before recording that is going to make this super weird is for this timeline to legitimately work and for the new characters, this 5th generation, to make sense because let's just say this as well. We have Tinian writing Batman, and he said a Bruce Wayne story for at least 15 months. So we are not seeing any of these changes until at least 2021. Let's make that clear now. But to make sense of these characters being heroes at 2021, everything that we are currently reading right now is taking place in the 1990s.
Yeah, and which is dumb because they reference things that are happening today.
Yeah.
Like, in Tom King's run, the current president is Donald Trump. They don't say that, but there's literally a panel in the Ivy arc where the president is, like, saying, I love Ivy, or whatever, and it's clearly Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So, and even if you want to nix Donald Trump, the previous one was Obama. Like, Obama was in all the comics, too.
Yeah.
Like, so, you can't... You just gonna nix all the 90s presidents? Like, that's really dumb.
And also, something that we need to kind of talk about also is because of all these crises and Flashpoint and everything else, the whole idea of Rebirth was the revelation that the New 52 actually was missing 5 years of time. So that 5 years of time, I don't know if it's gonna, be completely excluded from this new timeline, or they're just going to forget about it. I feel like DC, unfortunately, will say, oh, that was a John's idea, so we're not going to touch it. I think that's what will end up happening, unfortunately.
I don't know. So Clay told me this one thing that there is is this a theory or a true thing that DC considers whatever comes out on Wednesdays to be current continuity? Is that a for sure thing, or is
it is basically it's something that writers say so that way they can, like, hey, I thought this was happening, or I thought this happened like 2 years ago. Well, it's happening right now, so that's current continuity. It's just something that they can say to not have to explain away all of their mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very hard. If you're not somebody that reads comics consistently, you could easily just not even give a damn about this. But people that actually love comics and keep up with it, it's like, just think about your favorite show. Think about just one of your favorite characters, like, dying and randomly coming back and them not explaining it. It's like that in comics. They're like, well, how did it happen? You just have a bunch of questions. Or just anything, like if a story never finishes, like, oh, that love story never finished, it just went away. Like, those are questions comic book fans ask all the time. Unfortunately, you have Batman in like 5 different books, so they sometimes don't make sense. And people are like, oh, what about this? So that's one of the biggest things. The one thing I need to mention, and why I've always been okay with comics, is because I've always had this mindset that continuity when it comes to comic books is like Doctor Who. And I don't know if we've talked about this. on the podcast before, but if you're a nerd and you know anything about Doctor Who, one, it's one of the greatest shows on TV, and if you're not watching it, you're missing out. But they have this weird concept with timelines where time is constantly in flux. Little things can always change time, but there are fixed points in time that can never change no matter what you do. Those things will always happen. In comic books, it would be like Bruce Wayne's parents dying. It would be like Superman falling to Earth. It would be, Joker shooting Batgirl. Like, there are just a bunch of like iconic scenes and iconic moments in time in comics that are fixed points, and those will always happen. And that's kind of just how I view things. And I also believe that when it comes to comic books, like there's 80 years of Batman, but I think every story, you take the good things and you throw out the stupid things. And you just mold it to be like, oh yeah, every good story that's happened has happened in about a 5-year time span. And some people are like, that's stupid. There's no way that can happen. And be like, one, these are superhero comics. And two, just imagine superheroes are fighting crime every single day of their lives. It's like you going to work normally 9 to 5. You do a bunch of shit in 5 years at your job, or sometimes in my job it feels like you do nothing for 5 years. But the thing is, like, that's just how it is. So you imagine these big events happen in like a week. A week of Batman was like Metal, or what's the Heroes in Crisis, right? That happened in a week. Like, that's just how you have to think of comic books to make it plausible. If you start questioning everything, you're just going to hate comic books because it's impossible to make sense of everything. And don't get me wrong,
there are some events that happen in comics, whether it be in Marvel, DC, Indie, that clearly state, hey, this is this date, and the end, they're like, oh, this is this date. And you're like, what? That was like 4 hours? What the? Yeah. What? And so... and especially when you deal with somebody like The Flash, when everything is moving at super speed, you're slowing down to read. So things move very fast in comics, and so putting a definite...
Or
very slow, and putting it in a definite timeline can both be really cool, because for me, you ever remember those as a kid going into like a Scholastic book fair or library and seeing those like Marvel encyclopedias or that DC encyclopedia, and so you get to learn all about your favorite heroes and villains and all this.
Yeah.
This brings that to the table to sell again, because we haven't seen some of those, because there's...
I buy those at half price all the time, like Women of DC or something like that.
So this is just another product that they can throw out there. Hey, fans can gush over their favorite timeline, and this could either bode very well or not very well.
Yeah.
And we just have to see coming 2021.
Yeah, and I think me and Clay have talked about this because, like, in society in general, people don't like change. As much as some people say they do, a majority of people don't like change. And especially when it's something big that is consistent. Like, if you're like, all right, I'm always going to read a Batman story that has Bruce Wayne. But then you get something like Dick Grayson. People are okay with Dick Grayson because he's been Robin for 80 years or whatever.
And I want to say, I don't think a lot of people were joyful over Dick Grayson being Robin. I mean, being Batman. Because they love Bruce. Yeah. And so we're going to have that times a million when this happens.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the points is the one thing you do, and if you are somebody that's obviously hating this conversation right now, you're like, oh, I'm not going to read it. If you buy comics, then don't buy this. Like, that's the only way you're going to be able to show DC. I would always tell people to support comic books. If you're going to stop buying Batman, go buy an indie title or go buy something else that you might enjoy. Don't just stop buying comic books.
For sure.
Yeah, in this situation, if you don't like what DC's doing, then show them by not buying it. And I will always buy DC comics, but I always give things the first few issues. So I'll buy this new Batman for the first couple issues, but much like I did with this new Superman run that happened, I bought the first 6 issues, I wasn't liking it, I took it off my pull list. And even with some of the Batman stuff, I'm like, I'm not really feeling this, I'll take this off. I've always bought Detective, I've always bought Batman, but some of the other like side ones that are like 12 issues or whatever, I'll be like, I'm not really liking it. Like the Ninja Turtles one, the latest one, wasn't a big fan of, I stopped buying it. But it's just because it just got a little too wacky for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the unfortunate thing is what DC. I don't know if this has been confirmed or not. You can correct me on this, Clay. But there might be multiple Batman issues where one is the Black Batman, but the other ones are Bruce Wayne and like stuff like that.
So for me, like it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think this is what's gonna hinder their idea of, because here's the thing, there's always gonna be that person at DC that says, "Hey, we can't stop selling Batman.
Yeah.
And we definitely can't stop selling Bruce Wayne, because if that was the case, the whole like Batman going through time wouldn't have been a thing, because they needed Bruce Wayne to sell, because that's what sells. So if this, if Lucius becomes Batman, they're going to say, okay, well, in Detective, Bruce Wayne is still going to be Batman.
Yeah.
And we're still going to have Batman and Batcat. I can't say almost guarantee, because I don't know any of this, but I can almost guess that both Detective and Batcat will sell out compared to the Batman without Bruce Wayne.
Okay, so I do want to clarify that because it's very confusing. Batcat should not be on sale when the new Black Batman shows up, because Tinian's not introducing him. He's doing a Bruce Wayne story.
That's right. Okay,
Batcat, So Batcat, Tom King's final Batman story, I'm not going to say final Batman story, but his final arc of his current 100-issue run, which will end in Batcat, will take place during 2020. This new stuff is supposed to start happening in 2021.
So if if there are multiple books with different characters, they're like, hey, we kind of want to see how this goes. So John might be the new Superman, but we still want like a Smallville book with retired Superman with Lois, and we see where the sales go and everything else. I feel like that's something DC will do, and I don't necessarily fear for this, because I don't like this idea and I would actually enjoy this, but I feel like those people that are diehard Legacy fans will go buy Bruce, Clark, Diana, Hal Jordan, rather than these new people, because it's stories that not necessarily everybody wants right now.
Yeah, and that sucks, because it's one of the things I've talked about for the longest time, that you have these people that hate the, it's not gender bend, but it's like the diverse bending or whatever they call it. And they're like, well, just go create new characters that are Latino and create new characters that are black and do that and make movies about them or whatever. It doesn't work that way, because people that are like, I love Bruce Wayne, won't buy those things. That's why they just find it so much easier to let me just cast a black person, let me cast a Latino, let me do whatever in these movies, because you're not going to go buy a comic book that they build up. It sucks when it comes to this. It's hard enough to get people to go buy comic books right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you want to just have these new, you want to change classic stuff to diversity and stuff, or try to build new characters. DC literally tried that, last year? With Metal and all that, with the ones that branched out,
it was
Damage.
It was the new age of heroes. They were wanting to bring new heroes, a new kind of vibe to DC, kind of just vamp some things up. And all of those books, I think, lasted maybe 9 to 12 issues. Yeah,
all canceled within a year, pretty much. And it sucks. Some of those characters were really cool. Yeah, they were really cool, but the thing is you barely have people that want to buy the classic heroes, so they don't want to buy new characters. So this idea of just create new characters is not the best thing.
And let me say
DC
also,
has to do
what they did with Rebirth was very smart. They said, hey, because if you remember, I can't remember which convention it was, but I remember watching the live stream. They're like, hey, all these new books are going to be $2.99, and we're not going to change that. Everything with the Rebirth banner is going to be $2.99. And then, as soon as they were like, hey, I think we should get rid of the Rebirth banner, everything became $3.99.
Yeah.
And so I understand buying comics can be expensive depending on what you want to read, but I'm not telling you everybody needs to go buy every DC book. Pick the characters that you like. Juice likes Batman, so he gets majority only Batman books. And it's within the budget,
stuff like that.
It really depends. Me, I was a Superman person, so I was getting every Superman book, but then I got a little bit more intrigued with everybody else, and so I got to pick and choose, and that kind of helped because I was also in a comic book shop that got a discount. But for new readers, I would always suggest pick one character. Pick one character in one book, and then from there, see if you can branch out.
Yeah, because what you'll do is you'll start reading team-up books or something like that. Like, if you read something with Batman, you're going to see Batgirl or Dick Grayson every once in a while, and you'll be like, oh, I kind of want to see what Nightwing does. He was kind of cool in this book. Then you'll branch off to Nightwing, and that's what I did. In New 52, I started with Batman because, like, there was this cool Joker story going on, so I was like, all right, I want to read this Joker story. Or it was Court of Owls or whatever, just Scott Snyder's run. And then I was like, all right, this is so dark and stuff. Like, I want to read Nightwing. And then I read Batgirl by Gail Simone. And I was like, oh my God, this Batgirl is amazing. And so I read all of Batgirl. And then I was getting Red Hood and the Outlaws. And so, like, I'm a big Batman universe person. So I want to learn everything about the Batman universe. So that's how I branched out. And then Rebirth happened. I was like, you know what? I kind of want to read these other characters. So I bought some of Green Lantern because they introduced a Latina Green Lantern. And a Middle Eastern Iranian.
That was the New 52,
yeah. So no, that was Rebirth or New 52? No, it was when Rebirth.
No. Simon Baz was in the New 52, and then Cruz was the very end
Rebirth
of New 52 going into Rebirth.
But she was a Green Lantern before? I thought she became a Green Lantern in Rebirth.
No,
we got whatever.
Yeah.
Batman podcast. Yeah. But anyways, Cruz is awesome. She's great. But anyways, those are the things that intrigued me. And Rebirth was a starting point. And I think that's where a lot of people get like scared with comics is because they're like, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Maybe these new characters will be a starting point for a lot of people, especially a younger generation. They're like, okay, I don't need to know anything about Bruce Wayne because there's this new generation, and I could just read this new generation,
which I could definitely see, but. Also, let me just say this. Marvel has tried that year after year.
Yeah.
Literally, almost year after year. And nothing changes as far as sales. So they cancel the book and take it to a new number one by, every 3 months or so. And it looks bad on Marvel's part. Like, it really does. I don't want to buy a book at, let's say, hey, I buy it at issue 3, I catch up, I buy 1 and 2. And by issue 8, I'm hearing that in 2 months from now, it's going to go back to an issue number 1. Like, I don't want to start all over. I'm really getting into this story. What's going on?
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but it is the comic book business, and they're constantly trying to. Everybody seems to panic in the comic book business because it always seems like we don't know if this is going to continue. And it's been around for 80 years, but it's always that constant, like, we don't know if this is going to continue. That's how Marvel was. Marvel started selling off its characters for movies because they thought they were going to go bankrupt. Like, quick, just little note, DC had the option to buy Marvel at one point and didn't buy it from Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And then, so all DC could have owned everything, but they're like, nah, we don't need that. Which I'm kind of glad. I didn't want all the characters to be in the same thing, because if you don't think that, Blue Beetle can't even get a book right now. Imagine who would have survived that crazy, massive merge of characters. So I'm glad they're separate and they're their own things. But yeah, so that's what's going on in DC right now, folks. There's going to be a lot of craziness happening in the next 2 years. Me and Clay, honestly, are predicting this to fail. And we don't want it to. We necessarily don't want it to. It's just we know how crazy comic book fans can be, how fickle they can be, because they're so diehard and like, come on. There's people that won't watch the new DC movies because Snyder's not attached to it. Like, those are the kind of people that live in this world that buy comic books, and they will boycott. And I'm one of those. When I heard King was going to get fired, I was like, fuck this. I'm not buying any books anymore. And I did it for like 2 weeks, and then I came back. I was like, all right, I'll buy them all, because they fucking cleared up all the news, and he's still going to be writing. So I was like, all right, the story's going to finish. But that's how fickle nerds can be. And that's what, unfortunately, might happen with this. So we're wishing it the best, DC. Hopefully you got this right. We have...
And let me just say, again, this, for now, is only a rumor. Yeah. This is only a rumor. Like you said before, this could all just be a complete outrage on our part, and we're just kind of just like venting because of this rumor. Yeah. But it may turn out to be, hey, we're doing this timeline, so that way we can sell this really cool omnibus or whatever, Yeah. So that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that everything is true, and I have to see an adult 4-year brain Superman trying to fly around Metropolis trying to
Yeah.
save people. So
Yeah, so we'll that's a whole nother podcast, but we believe there's an architect behind all of this, and this is already 30 minutes. We don't need to add another 30 minutes to this.
yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and jump into the comic books of this week. Like I said, there's like 11 different books, but we're gonna hit on the top 5 pretty much. Yeah, I believe it's like the top 5 that we thought were interesting. And we're gonna talk about those. Again, if you haven't been to a comic shop, go to one. Just pick up one book, go check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff.
And if
at
you
comic
don't
shops.
know where your local comic book shop is, there is a website called I believe it's localcomicshopfinder.com, and you put in your zip code or address, it'll show you the nearest one. I think that is really cool. Every single time I post a new episode of my podcast, I put that link in the description so that way people can go find it. But go find your local comic book shop, support them. Most of them are awesome, so do it for sure.
I will say that my comic book shop, I genuinely didn't need to be buying comics for a while, but I just kept going because it was cool talking to people that liked comic books. So you can probably find a really cool community at your local comic shop. So highly suggest doing that. Also, if you have no comic shop near you and you live out in the boonies, but you have internet, get DC Universe. That's not a sponsor, but I'm just saying, if you want comic books at a good price, DC Universe's comic selection is insane.
I think it's over 2,000 or something like that books.
Oh, I think it's like 12,000 or 20.
Yeah.
Didn't they add like a crazy amount this year?
Yeah, they added a
blows my
crazy
mind.
amount, and it's only $6 a month, $7 a month.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe like 8 or 9. I don't remember. I buy it for a year, so I don't really know.
Yeah, same here.
But anyways, that's another thing you can definitely check out. DC, if you are listening to this, a sponsorship would be nice. But at the same time, organize your app a little bit better. Organize it by freaking. It's so hard to look up stuff by issues. Like, come on, do a little bit better there. But anyways, speaking about issues, the first thing we're going to talk about from this week is Batman and the Outsiders. If you guys haven't been keeping up with this book at all, it is Bruce Wayne has a team of outsiders. This is an old school comic book, but the new team of outsiders is Black Lightning, Katana, Cassandra Cain, and Duke Thomas, who is the Black Batman that we think should be the next Black Batman.
Yes.
But in this current comic book, he is Signal and has one of the best costume designs, in my opinion. Like, his costume design is so awesome.
Oh, yeah. And Dexter Soy highlights it so well in this issue, by the way. Just want to make that comment right before we start talking about it. Awesome.
So in this issue right now, in Outsiders, basically what has been going on in the story, just to give you a quick rundown, is there was a meta like teenager who was kidnapped by Ra's al Ghul, who apparently she has some like badass powers or something like that Ra's wants. Batman knows this, and he was sent out to protect her, or wanted to protect her. But unfortunately, she's been taken to be trained by Ra's and everything like that. In the last issue, they saved her, but Duke and Cassandra, who were not a part of the mission, got attacked by one of Ra's henchmen. And now that's basically what is happening in this issue. They're fighting him, and they're starting to learn some secrets about Batman. So, Clay, what did you think about this issue?
I thought this issue, I said it before you started talking, clean art that I love. That's one of the main draws of this book is Dexter Soy on art. I actually really enjoyed this book. I love the semi-reveal of Shiva,
Yeah.
and I loved the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 page spread, double page spread. That was on this book. I'm reading it digitally, so it looks like one page, but it was actually a 2-page spread. Yeah. Awesome. I love the dynamic that Cassandra and Duke have had since the very beginning of this book. I was very confused as who was the villain that was captured again? I can't remember his name. Karma, right?
Karma.
I didn't read the first story with Karma, so I still need to go back and read more about them. But it really messed up Duke's mind. Like, he scarred him, basically. And Cassandra has been there for Duke and said, hey, if you need somebody, I'm here. Like, just remember that. You're not alone. You don't have to be like Batman and brooding and, be sulking in your own depression. We are a team, and we're going to fight this. And I love that. That was really Black Lightning's thing at the very beginning of this story, was, hey, Batman gave me this team. We're not going to be his soldiers. We're going to be a legitimate, here to help people type thing.
Yeah, like a family, basically.
And I overall really enjoy where it's going. Like you had said earlier today, this book apparently sold out everywhere, and people are just dying to get it. I don't know why.
I don't understand that.
I really don't know why.
I don't get that either.
But
it could be Shiva. I haven't seen her in anything in forever, and I know she was a big character back in the day. I mean, it's Cassandra Cain's mother, so people probably, if you guys don't know who Shiva is, apparently she's regarded as one of the greatest fighters in DC. And she could kick Batman's ass, is what people say. I haven't read those issues where she does kick his ass, and I don't know what the story is, but that's what it's regarded as. Batman has a tough time fighting her. She works with Raish, and she is the mother of Cassandra Cain, who is also regarded as one of the greatest fighters in the DC universe. So that could be the reason why, because there's nothing else. When I heard about this selling out, I was like, somebody died. I thought Duke died, or I was like, somebody died, because that's usually what happens at comic shops. When somebody dies, that's the first issue to go, because everybody's like, they're never going to come back, which they come back the next issue.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the issue too. I know Clay said he didn't know about Karma, which was, this is written by Brian Hill, who, if you don't know him, you probably know him if you've seen the show Titans. He's written a few of the episodes, but he also dabbles in comic books. And he's more into indie stuff, but he has been able to write some Batman stuff. This arc actually continues from a detective arc that he did, and it involved this character named Karma that had a past with Batman. I believe Batman kicked his ass when he was a soldier or something like that, and that scarred him. So he wanted revenge against Batman. And of course, when you want to go after Batman, Batman is Batman, so you're like, all right, I'm not going to be able to beat this dude, so I'm going to go after his family. And he went after, the crew. Duke was one of those people, and I believe he either, really beat up Duke, or he just made Duke, freeze, and, it cost, somebody else getting their ass kicked or something like that, because Duke couldn't react. It's been a while since I read that arc, but it was something like that, and it basically made Duke feel like he's not worthy of being, he's not a Robin, but just being a sidekick of Batman. And so that's what we're seeing here. And what kind of leads to this is they find out that Karma's still alive. I don't remember him dying or anything in that story, so I'm kind of thrown off with this too, so I have to go back and read that. But seeing that Karma's alive, Duke's he's shocked. Well, why the hell is this guy here? What's happening? And Shiva is saying that Batman is keeping him alive, or he's holding him here. So I'm taking that as Duke's gonna be mad that Bruce has been hiding this guy, and this is a very typical Batman thing to do. He likes to hide people away, and it's not right, but it's what he does sometimes. Batman does questionable things at times, even though I love him. But so that was the biggest thing that happened here, and it ends with Shiva kicking Cassandra's ass, and this other guy, which I think his name's Ishmael or something like that, he ends up shocking Duke in the back, and he's I'm going to show you the light. And Duke's actually a metahuman. A lot of people don't know this, but he's actually a metahuman. He has this power to actually see, basically he can track people pretty much, is what, if I'm not mistaken, he's able to see their light and track them. So he's got this crazy meta power. But yeah, overall, the art I thought was awesome. Duke's outfit in this looks so freaking badass.
Especially in that photo where Ishmael is grabbing him by the neck and is holding him,
shocking him
above. You see every detail in that suit. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah. This suit would look amazing in real life. If they put this in a movie, he would be awesome. Reeves should just do that. End the third movie with fucking bringing him in. That would be dope. But anyways, so yeah, I thought this issue was cool. Again, I don't know why people were buying it. It was sold out when I went to the comic shop. The person I talked to that was there was yeah, people have been calling me all day. So the only thing I could think of is Shiva fights Cassandra. That's the only thing I could think of. But I don't know. Maybe somebody else will let me know that information. But moving on to the next one, we have a very interesting person writing this next one. The comic's called The Batman's Grave, and it's written by Warren Ellis. So a lot of people would know that name from other stuff that I don't know. Do you know, Clay? Because I know Ellis, he's a big name.
Warren Ellis, if you've ever read or heard of The Spirit, there was a movie about him not too long ago
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so he was the one that created the spirit, and
Okay.
really, really big name in comics. He's actually won tons of awards. I'm pretty sure there's an award named after him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how big he is in comics right now.
I literally have a spirit book. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Um,
this book, I will say, it is in my mind from reading it. They didn't really connect it to anything. This is kind of
yeah.
just like in its own little, corner of DC right now. But it reminds me how great, like, Brian Hitch doesn't do a whole lot of like in-depth detail, but
Yeah.
some of his, like, all of his splash pages, because I feel like that's his like specialty. His splash
Mm-hmm.
pages are amazing. I love his splash pages. Really, really cool. You get a one at the very beginning with Batman looking over Gotham. Really,
Yeah.
really cool. This story is about him finding out that there was a death, a murder, whatever you want to call it, at this apartment complex. People have been calling 911, but they've been being put on hold, which legitimately happens in the real world, and that is
Oh, yeah.
terrifying for the fact that
Mm-hmm.
that actually happens. But he questions the people at the apartment complex. They give him a little bit of information. He goes inside the apartment and he sees a decomposing body. In this apartment, the of this guy, he sees nothing but Batman newspaper
News
clips
clipping.
all around every wall, around every single wall. He's doing a little research, looking into this. What is it exactly? Was this guy up to? What was he doing?
Mm-hmm.
He emulates the entire room in his Batcave later on to learn more. But before we get there, we have a little interaction between Bruce and Alfred, and this was something that I didn't necessarily like. Now,
Yeah, I didn't think it was
yeah,
Alfred.
in a lot of different continuities,
Mm-hmm.
since we've been talking about this since the very beginning with 5G and all that, in a lot of different continuities, Alfred was a soldier. Sometimes he wasn't. So
Yeah.
it's very, wishy-washy on which continuity it usually is. But in this one,
Mm-hmm.
he was a soldier in the past. And he tells Bruce, hey, you know what? We live in a city of evil. And sometimes I just think it'd be easier to kill everybody.
Yeah,
And I
that
was
was
like,
shocking.
whoa! Like,
Yeah.
this does not sound like the Alfred that I have been reading for the past 8 years. It really
Yeah.
doesn't.
Alfred is drinking, by the way, I should throw out there,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it could be that.
And it does
Uh,
state, like, I don't know if it was like narrative boxes or whatever, but
mhm.
I believe it does state that Alfred was contemplating like the danger that Bruce is in from time to time.
Yeah, yeah. So at the beginning of it, it has Alfred cleaning the graves of the Waynes,
Yeah.
and Bruce Wayne actually has his own grave there because his parents said that when Bruce dies, they want him lying next to them, and they probably didn't know it was going to be that soon that they were going to die. But Alfred has he goes out there and he cleans the graves, like he cleans the gravestones, and he says the only thing missing from Bruce Wayne's gravestone is a date.
Yeah.
And yeah, he even in the caption it says that Alfred knows that eventually he's gonna see Bruce Wayne's grave. Like he's gonna, it won't be empty
Well, yeah,
anymore. Is
it's
basically what
really
he
sad
said.
to think about because of course Alfred is older than him and he
Yeah,
knows in his mind he will be in this grave before I'm dead, basically.
yeah. So it's really crazy. So yeah, that was really the only thing I didn't like about the book was it did feel off for Alfred because Alfred's always the moral compass. He's like the guy that will slap
He is
Batman if
very
Batman's not
optimistic when
being.
Batman isn't.
Yeah, he is when Batman thinks he's about to cross the line or he's getting near that edge, Alfred's always the one that's like, why do we fall? He's the one that says that. And he's really his father. Like he grew up, he raised Batman pretty much. And so yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that. Again, I'm like, it's whatever. Not everybody knows how to write Alfred. But I always imagine that Alfred is a soldier. Like I always just feel like that's just even better because he's the second most important character when it comes to Batman and just knowing he has like tactical like a mindset, I really like that. But the story ends up ending with this weird twist where Batman basically solves the mystery, and the guy wasn't really dead. He was hiding under the
No, no,
bed.
no.
Like,
That is the killer.
you think that's the killer?
Yeah.
I thought of it as the guy that's researching him. That's how I read it. Like he wants to know so much about Batman that he like faked it. So, I mean, that might be a real dead body, but I felt like that was the actual person because they're wearing the same clothes. Like, he's wearing like the same suit as the guy that died.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
Well, I mean, the ties are different, but the hairs look the same. So, like, I don't know. That's why I'm intrigued by this story. Because if it is somebody that they faked a murder or if they faked a death to actually get near Batman, that'll be really interesting.
I didn't even consider that. That's weird.
Yeah, so that's why I'm intrigued by this. I could totally be wrong, and you could be right that is the killer, but Batman's just gonna throw him in Arkham, and it's over? You know what I mean? So I'm wondering, because the mystery here seemed like, why was this guy so obsessed with Batman? Because we learned a good amount about the guy. Like, he used to be a lawyer, and then he, like, had a nervous breakdown, and he lost everything, and he had to end up living in the slums. And, you know, the only family he had was he met this, like, guy. He met this, like, guy that was, like, fancy or something like that. Because if I'm not mistaken, the guy that was, that they think the suspect is, has, like, a curly mustache or some kind of mustache. This guy has a mustache in here, but it doesn't look very prominent. So I'm thinking about freaking like little like mystery like old school mustache man.
Yeah,
you know
like
what I mean?
twirly
mustache. So I don't know. So I'm thinking it's the guy that's obsessed with Batman, knowing that Batman would find him eventually and solve it and be like, oh, I need you to help me do something. I don't know. So I'm intrigued by the story because we're both hella confused here. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. This is gonna be a 12-issue story, which might be a little long. But we'll see. If it's
Ellis
still good,
can really grasp me by the 3rd or 4th issue to be like, "Hey, you want to stick around?" I'll be in it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't mind long stories. I mean, I've been reading King's Run for 80
But like you said, I feel like this is one of those stories where they're trying to be the next Long Halloween or the next Hush type story.
Could be. Which I have no issues with that. So going from there, we're gonna go on to one of the main Batman titles, and that is Detective, which in this one we finally got a continuation of the Mr. Freeze story that they've been teasing forever for the last few issues, but this is all Freeze now. In the last issue, we had a bunch of people just capturing women that looked like Nora Freeze, and Mr. Freeze has been doing all these experiments on them to try to bring back his wife. And basically, this is kind of like a big fight scene, like a big fight in this whole issue. It's Bruce confronting Mr. Freeze and all of the people that he's kidnapped and stuff. And, it's classic, just like, oh, Batman shows up in a badass suit, by the way.
Dude, Mankey did such a great job on that on that first entrance with the flamethrower. Holy
it's so
crap.
Amazing. So, the only way I can describe this, guys, is if you've played, is it Arkham City? Where there was an expansion for Mr. Freeze, and he had like a freaking fire suit. Yeah. It's similar to that, just looks 10 million times more badass.
Yeah.
And he comes in with a freaking flamethrower into Freeze's like lair, and he just looks awesome. These people start attacking him. He's like using the flamethrower. This thing just looks beast mode. And every time I see a new Batsuit, I get giddy. Like, I'm like, oh my god. You know, if I have to compare it to something, it's like the way Iron Man has a new suit in every MCU movie.
Yeah.
Like, Batman having a new suit is just always epic. And this was cool. So, there's not really a lot to this issue besides the ending, to be honest, which, something that I don't think we've seen in main continuity before. Victor Freeze, aka Mr. Freeze, actually brings his wife back to life, which is something that's been going on forever. And the final page is her saying, Victor, stop, and just like this scared face. And so, yeah, what'd you think of this issue?
You know, the one nitpick that I had was that Tomasi, before writing this detective story, I always knew him from writing Superman and writing Green Lantern. Both of these characters, at points in their books, are very happy-go-lucky, jokey, whatever. And I feel like the jokes that he was wanting to throw in here with Alfred didn't really stick with me.
Okay, like the Flash mask and stuff?
In the beginning where he acted like he was dead so that way Batman could scare the guy for information. Like, that was a little distasteful, but the end of that conversation where he says, oh, well, I'll make sure to not breathe next time,
Yeah.
And that's a little dry humor, and I thought that was funny. But then
Yep.
to do two jokes in one book with him coming in with a flash mask was a little silly, and I was just like, okay, kind of took me out of it a little bit. But overall, just like you, felt that this new costume for Batman was super badass. Whenever Freeze put him on ice, I was like, holy crap, how's he going to get out of this? And it was awesome that his suit actually freaking heated up.
Yeah.
And all you saw was the bat symbol when he was coming up out of the ice. Really, really cool. But you brought up something that I was also thinking when we were at work today was the Victor don't at the very end.
Yeah.
Is that her saying, don't wake me up? As if her self-conscious was still kind of awake? Or was this the very last thing she said or was going to say before she was put on ice?
So we have this theory that we were talking about at work that maybe, because everybody knows Freeze is just like, oh, he's this guy that wants to bring his wife back. He'll do anything to bring his wife back. And so he's always been the most sympathetic character that was a villain against Batman because he's only doing it for love. Now, Snyder tried to make him a psychopath in his run of Batman, which a lot of people don't ever talk about, and I think it's kind of a miss, in my opinion. It's one of those rare Snyder misses. And in this one, if our theory were to be true, that maybe she got put on ice before, maybe Freeze was always crazy, and she was like, don't do this to me, and then he puts her on ice, and he's just been saying oh, I'm trying to, bring my wife back, but he's the reason she went on ice. That could be really interesting, a story that I'd be hella intrigued in. But if this is something where she did have just her subconscious was always there, then yeah, she could probably be like, don't bring me back. But we'll have to wait and see. We've never seen this story, so I'm hella intrigued because we've never seen Nora Freeze come back to life. She's always been in the glass case, So yeah, I'm pretty intrigued. But again, best thing in this thing was that bat suit. That bat suit was awesome. So moving on to, I gotta ask before we talk about the last one. I know you said Mark, your co-host on the Comic Book Legion podcast, said that our final book we're going to talk about, which is Joker Harley, Criminal Insanity, was his book of the week. Did you think, was it your book of the week?
So here's the thing. When I first attempted to read this book was at 5 a.m.
Criminal Insanity or Joker? Because we're going to talk about this Joker book, but I want to see, was Joker better than Criminal Insanity in your opinion?
After reading Criminal Insanity fully, I think it was my book of the week.
Oh, okay.
But I attempted to read Criminal Insanity at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it literally made me fall asleep in the beginning. So I was like, oh man, it was so bad that it made me fall asleep. So... At first, I didn't like it, but when I actually sat down and had time to finish it and really holy crap, this actually has something to it, it was my favorite book of the week.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about that at the end. I just wanted to bring that up because this next book I really enjoyed it. So it's one of the Year of Villains. Okay, so currently in DC, they're doing this huge year-long event called Year of the Villain. And this is across all of the books, but they've been doing these one-shots for villains. Everybody's been getting one.
There was
Riddler,
Sinestro, Black Mask, Riddler, and now Joker.
Yeah, so Joker has one, and of course, everybody's like, oh, Joker. Joker just came out in theaters, so it's just it's heavy. But this book was surprisingly good. And also, I should mention that it's from the legendary John Carpenter. So, he's a master of horror, and this was insane. This
was crazy.
But it was also so Joker.
Yeah.
So Joker.
It really was. And there's a part that we're going to talk about that I got to the point where I was like, what the...
So, yeah, let me run this down. But the reason why I say it's so Joker is there's a lot of people that write Joker well, but there's not a lot of people that write comedy Joker well, because there's a lot of people that will try to be funny, but it's cringy as hell, we just talked about Tomasi in Detective when he did his Joker story. We didn't like that too much. We thought it was kind of cringy, it was a little too goofy. But Carpenter, which I don't know if he's written a lot of comics before, but he nails the Joker in this. So we're going to go ahead and run down what this is about. So it's actually from the perspective of an inmate in Arkham. And it's Joker's somebody, much like if you've seen the Joker movie, he's able to get people on his side. Like, he's charming, he's charismatic, or whatever you want to call it, but there are people that just want to work for Joker. And so in this whole comic, it's from this perspective of this random guy that what is his name? Like the Ace of Hearts or something like that? And Joker's like, oh, the Six of Hearts is his name.
Yeah.
So the Joker's henchmen are cards in a deck. And Joker's like, well, I'm just going to call you Of. And like, he just doesn't give a damn what he is, because everybody's expendable to Joker. So anyways, this guy, you're hearing these like thought boxes of like, my life sucks, I don't know what to do, but Joker just seems like everybody notices him and I want to be like the Joker. That's pretty much what you're seeing happen. And so Joker is going throughout the city, causing havoc and stuff, and this guy is the only one sticking by him. And Joker's like, I like you. So they kind of go around, and Joker threatens him too. Like, he puts a gun to his head and he's like, tell me something funny. And that usually ends with you dead.
Oh, yeah.
In the comic books. So this gets really dark because Of actually says, like, he tells Joker about, like, oh yeah, well, I was abused when I was younger by my dad and stuff, and he would beat my mom, and so I knocked him out. Like, I hit him over the head with a pan, and my mom and dad pretty much kicked me out of the house. And Joker's like, that's great. Like, he just loves that this guy's going through, like, pain and just suffering. Joker just loves it. And so they're going around town, like, causing havoc. This was one of my favorite parts. I don't know how you felt about it, but they go into a convenience store.
With Condiment King.
And, yeah, and they start robbing it, right? Well, like, the guy's like, hey, I'm going to pay for this. And Joker's over there stealing, like, candy and stuff in the background. And Condiment King busts into the door and starts making all of these condiment puns. And I literally LOL'd at some of these. I'm the sriracha of sin. Like, dude, I was like cracking up with some of these things. I'm the vinaigrette of violence. Like, he had this whole monologue with just sauces. And it was just so hilarious. And then Joker comes out of nowhere and he's like, hey, Condiment King, what's up? And Condiment King just shits his pants.
Like,
he's like, oh no. And, Joker basically like, oh, you're not supposed to be out here causing trouble. Because one thing we do need to point out, this happens during City of Bane. So criminals are not supposed to be doing criminally things, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's basically, and Joker is a cop. So we know that in City of Bane. Anyway, so Joker's like, oh, you're doing some crimes. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. And me personally, it shows that he basically gets shot.
No, so he grabs Condiment King's big blaster full of ketchup and all these other sauces, and he's put...
Is that what it is?
And he...
Oh, yeah,
he puts it up to his head, and he says, you're a source on this... you're a scourge on this city, Condiment King, a villain. And you know what villains deserve? Justice. And you just see mustard and ketchup just splurt all over the place. Okay. And in the very next panel, you just see his head full of mustard.
Yeah, okay.
Which is
so
Juice's nightmare,
I was kind of worried there. Yeah, I hate mustard. It's disgusting. So I feel bad for Condiment King here. But yeah, because I was wondering, it does say like sploosh.
Yeah.
Like when it hits. So I was scared that he got shot in the head. And because he does have like this like you just got shot. But I was like, that could be a dying noise.
Yeah.
So I was worried there, but okay, he's cool. Because Condiment King is a stupid character, but I love him. Like, I love him from the animated series, too. Like, he's just awesome. And, so anyways, after he freaking mustards Condiment King, he, tells the clerk, he holds up 2 costumes. He's like, how much for these? And it's a Batman and Robin costume. And then, so what happens now is Joker and his sidekick now become Batman and Robin. And do Batman and Robin stuff throughout the city, which is awesome.
I love the fact that this Batman suit is a Batman 66.
Adam West. Yeah, it's an Adam West.
And they even
suit.
do the old school Adam West climbing on with the rope.
So good.
So awesome.
Yeah. So this is what leads to the one thing Clay wants to talk about. I'm going to let him talk about this.
This is probably...
This part is terrible and funny at the same time.
But it's so Joker in a very fucked up way. So they see this person walking their dog, and was it... what did they call him? They called him a...
let's see.
Oh, he's a crooked criminal.
Yeah.
If I've ever seen one before. And we need to put him on the straight and narrow. And so they start to go down there with the rope, and this guy's like, what are these guys? And so Of is like, okay, I just need to talk to him. We're just going to tell him whatever, and everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And he's they're playing the role.
Joker does say, he says, we mustn't kill him.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, because he's threatening him. He's like, what are you doing? And he's like, we mustn't kill him. It's not our way.
And he's like, I wasn't going to, okay? Like, I'm like, don't kill me for trying to think that I was going to kill him. Because I feel like that's what he was probably thinking. And so he says, you know what? I don't want to see you around here again. And Batman, freaking Joker just shoots the guy right in the chest. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, he had a gun. He's like, the dog also has a gun. And he freaking shoots the dog. And I'm like, what? What in the world?
And then he starts hugging Robin. He's like, I saved you. And like, it's just insane. So, and like, you see the dog getting shot. And I was like, no, I don't care if it's a fictional dog, a virtual dog, or whatever. Sorry. I always hate seeing that.
Like, when I read it, he said, the dog also has a gun. I started laughing so hard.
It was hilarious.
I'm going to hell.
He's like, I'm so sorry, my boy. He was like, it was them or you, or like, whatever. And it's so funny because the next panel, like, the guy starts questioning if this is right. Like, he's like, I don't know if this is right. You know what I mean? And Joker's all like, you're welcome for me saving you. He was like, but, we got to go out of here. He's like, look at this dog. He had a gun. And it's a picture of the dog. And then another panel of the dog. And he puts a gun right next to him. He's like, see, he had a gun. Just so, like, planning evidence. And I was like, wow, it looks terrible. Because this dog's, like, clearly dead. And I'm just like, oh, my God, this is so terrible.
And this is a main continuity book.
The dog had a gun the thing. Blows my mind.
This is a main continuity book, by the way.
Yeah.
So for them to put this in the Year of the Villain label, I was like, oh my God, DC is actually letting Carpenter do whatever the fuck he wants in this book.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, and then so the next thing is the Suicide Squad actually shows up, or a member of the Suicide Squad, which is Enchantress, pops up. And so Ub is like infatuated with her. He's like, oh my God, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, which she should be. Her name's Enchantress. Yeah. And, freaking Joker's all like, hey, Enchantress, what's up? Like, blah, blah. And she basically doesn't care about them. She's like, stay out of my way. She's there for something else, which they're more than likely doing reconnaissance for City of Bane. Yeah. Like, they're trying to take Gotham back. And so we have this one guy just basically kind of getting into his feels, which I actually thought this was really good. Because he starts talking about how he's like, oh, this beautiful woman would never like me. She'd probably make fun of me. She probably would want somebody that's like really big and strong, and I'm just this puny guy, and she'd probably laugh with her girlfriends about me. Like, he's just going into his feels about how he could never get like a beautiful girl, which I think a lot of men out there could relate to. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then so out of nowhere, like, you can see Joker kind of egging him on, and he's all like, who do you think you are? And they kind of just go off, and she's basically doesn't care. And, Joker's all like, oh, I know how we can beat them. We got to get everybody on our side. And he basically goes online or whatever and just tells everybody, like, people are trying to take over your city. You need to fight for it, blah, blah, blah. And then it just goes to, like, this bigger, like, full-page spread of Enchantress kicking all their asses. Yeah. Like, Enchantress just, like, beats all of them because she's got magical powers. And so it goes from there. Joker's all like, I know how to get out of this. And he, of course, gave everybody flowers, and it has, like, Joker gas in it. And the guy questions all like, whoa, Joker didn't give me one. And basically Joker killed everybody to get out of there. And he saves his friend, and then they're eating milkshakes. And apparently the Joker really loves peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So they're at this diner. Joker doesn't have, he's upset with the price of the PB&J that he just had, and he's gonna kill the guy. And then Robin actually says, I'll pay for it. And Joker gets kind of mad about that. Yeah. And he's all like, you're making me look bad trying to pay for me or whatever. And he's like, your mom must suck. And he's like, yeah, my mom does suck. And at this point, they're jumping rooftops. The kid actually falls to the ground. And Joker's like, oh, I'll save you. And this guy just runs. And he tries to go to, like, be where the hobos are and stuff like that. And this is City of Bane. So villains are going through there and being like, yo, everybody hates you. Like, Two-Face, Harvey Dent doesn't want you guys here, so get out of here. And so this guy has nowhere to go, so he goes home. Like, he says he hasn't been home in, like, 5 years. And he doesn't know if his mom's gonna, like, love him or hate him or what. So he's going home, and when he gets there, Joker's there.
Dude, it's
and
crazy.
I was just like, Yeah, she's like tied up, which her mouth is gagged. He's still in the Batman suit, and he just has like he has a knife to her throat, and you're just like, whoa! Like it just changes tone so fast, and like the mom's just like scared out of her mind, and Joker's all like, he's basically threatening her, and he's like, hey, what's up, buddy? Blah blah. And this guy ends up attacking Joker, and he knocks off his mask, right? He's like
No.
choking him.
So yeah, he knocks. I don't think he knocks off the mask. Joker actually takes off the mask. So this is one of the parts that I thought was like, whoa, this is getting weird. Because he jumps towards Joker, starts grabbing his neck. Joker takes off his own mask and puts it on of.
Oh, yeah.
And then he imagines that it's actually
Like
Batman choking him. And he's like, ha ha, ha ha, harder. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and even Ov's like, what? Like, he's like, what are you doing? And
even Joker's like, well, that was disappointing.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't know, like, freaking Joker, that's his main goal. He wants to be killed by Batman because he knows that is his end game. If he can get Batman to kill somebody, he knows he's won. And it pays this really nice homage in these next panels because basically Joker's all like, well, you're disappointing. And he's like, I'm going to give you the special treatment for a sidekick. And he starts beating the shit out of this guy in a Robin suit, which is homage to him beating the hell out of Jason Todd when Jason Todd died. And Joker, still trying to be funny at the end, says like, hey, if you could, like he basically lets the kid live, but he beats the shit out of him. He's like, if you could, have a vengeful heart after this and do some, come after me after a few years of training, I'd really love that, pretty much. And then Joker just leaves. He's just like, farewell.
And let me just say, that point right after he's like beating on him and like he like lifts up, he's full of blood, he looks into the roof or whatever. That is a beautiful panel. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's great. And then, so the kid lives and he ends up untying his mom. And his mom's like, I love you. I'm so sorry for what happened. And she's, they basically reconcile. And she takes him to the hospital. And that's how it ends. And this book was just one hell of a surprise. Like, I loved it. I literally laughed out loud in multiple parts. And
he's got a gun!
Yeah, like, it was just so... The dog's got a gun, too! Like... It just blew my mind, and I would gladly read more John Carpenter books because that was awesome. But going on to our final comic book of the week, it is Joker / Harley Criminal Insanity. And I didn't know what to expect from this book because it's on the Black Label. It's an Elseworld kind of story. And Harley actually, in this book, is working with the GCPD. So she's apparently a genius in this book.
The way I saw this, after really going more than just like a few pages in, because I stopped reading last night, or technically this morning, I want to say about 9 pages in. When you get after that point, this is Criminal Minds, but with DC characters.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Yeah, for sure.
And it read so well. And it was great.
Yeah, it was a badass book. I'm not gonna lie about that. I don't know. Oh, there it is. I was trying to find it in my folder. But so this book actually has like this like hyper realistic art in it, to where some of it looks like photos, like genuinely looks like photos of people. Because so it kind of jumps back and forth between time throughout the comic. And we see this Harley in a younger like area. She went to go work in Bloodhaven. She's like a nurse, basically, is what it seems like. And she comes home to what we can imagine is her girlfriend, who is supposed to be Ivy, but her name is Edie or something like that. And she's all like there, and she's like, hey, why does it smell like bleach in here? Like blah, blah, blah. And she's like eating Chinese food, and she discovers Ivy dead in the bathtub, like tied up, and like her throat is slit. And so this is what makes Harley want to go. Yeah, and it was the Joker that killed her. And you can see like she dies with a smile, so you can assume that like he gave her toxins or whatever. And of course the GCPD shows up like, hey, would you have any questions? Blah, 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 blah. We see that they kind of seem like they were either best friends or lovers. Well, I'm just going to assume they were lovers because that's what's happening in current continuity. But this is basically what leads to Harley wanting to be part of the GCPD. And we go on to find out that, she joins the squad and she's solved a bunch of like cold cases or, just like criminal homicides or whatever. She's just a badass. Of course, other detectives have taken, credit for her work, but she basically puts everybody in their place. So this is actually like a serious Harley Quinn. She even calls herself Harley Quinn, but she's not in the jester outfit or anything like that. She's just a good guy, and she's trying to solve these murders. That she's trying to solve her girlfriend's murder or whatever, and this was by the Joker. And what they say is after this killing, or I guess there was a few killings that happened this night, Joker's gone. Like, he hasn't shown up, he hasn't killed anybody else, so her case has gone cold and nobody's looking at it anymore.
Yeah.
So Harley's main goal is to actually bring that case back to light and solve it herself. So we have some cool just like shots of her training. She does like kickboxing and stuff like that. But you're getting all these inner thoughts of her reading all of these cold cases. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. But the way to figure this out is I got to go back to Joker's first kill. And it happened to be this guy named like Mickey something.
Mick. It was, sorry.
Yeah, I forget his name. But
Mick Kelly.
Yeah, so Mick Kelly. So Harley basically starts becoming a detective, and she's going to ask the first person that was around when this guy got killed. So starts asking his questions. So we get another like flashback of this Mick Kelly guy in, again, this like kind of like hyper realistic art. And it's a kid, his mom, and this Mick Kelly guy buying like some Wayne tech. This kid wants to build like some radios or something like that. And, he gets confronted by some goons that I guess he used to work for. And, the mom and the kid are, like, just going to go off and, like, drive off. And they end up getting into a car accident.
That was accidentally caused by Batman.
Yeah, I forgot that part. So Batman was in this chase. And, it's accidentally caused by Batman because he cuts off a truck or something like that. The truck swerves, knocks the car into the river. They save the kid, but they don't save the mom.
Yeah.
And the dad is like super pissed. He's like, why didn't you save her? Which is the stupidest thing an adult can tell a kid. Like, why didn't you save your adult mom that weighs like 4 times more than you? Like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So, at this point, automatically thought this kid was the Joker. Did you feel that?
I don't think I felt that. I felt more so that he would be involved in the whatever story is coming next. Like, I feel like he is somehow so deranged because of the lifestyle that his father grew him up in. Because that's one thing that you're learning the story from the kid from this bartender at this bar. And so she's like, oh, I didn't know them. I lived across from them. And, I would hear the screaming all the time. And so she's like, oh, the little kid would be screaming. He's like, oh, no. It was the dad. Like, the dad would always scream at him. And so I assume that when this kid in high school saw that his dad was dead on the floor, he probably just got all of his stuff and left. And I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
But...
So, because he got abused and stuff.
So one thing that I absolutely loved about this aesthetic is when it goes black and white like this. I am a sucker for anything 1920s, 1940s, and that's what this was. This was a 1940s noir detective type feel, and you got like the narration from Harley as well, and so it just felt so awesome whenever I was reading this. Really, really loved those parts particularly. But she goes on to this graveyard because she gets a call from Gordon. And they're like, hey, we haven't had forensics look at anything because we want to hear your thoughts. And she's just naming like, oh, this is this and this is this, and this has signs of this. And one of the detective is like, oh, we don't need you, we all know that's a satanic symbol and blah blah blah. And she's like, well, actually it's Leonardo da Vinci's circle of, I forgot what it was called.
The Venetian Man or some shit like
and
that.
So she's like, Gordon can tell you about it. I already have a class to teach. And she goes and she teaches the police officers and I guess some college class about who is technically considered a psychopath or criminally insane. And she goes through like legitimate actual serial killers, which I thought was a
Yeah, like
really
Ted
nice
Bundy.
touch for this story.
Yeah, that was really dope.
Uh,
Yeah.
One of the most recent guys that a lot of people would be aware of because they made a Netflix movie about him was Ted Bundy. They talked about Ted
Yeah.
Bundy at the very end, and she's like, he wasn't criminally insane because he knew everything that he was doing, and it took planning and all this. So he was just sick in the head as far as like this was the thing that he wanted to do, but he wasn't criminally insane.
Yeah.
And, after the class, this guy comes up and talks to her, and she's like, oh, I know exactly who this guy is. This is, one of those fetish guys that likes murder and likes death and all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
And so he's asking her all these weird questions. She's like, well, I've seen a lot of dead bodies. Maybe you'd like to become a part of a crime scene. And he's like, oh, shit, I'm going to run out of here.
Yeah.
But this was the part that I was going to talk to you about. That's the Joker, right? That bumps
hoodie?
into her.
Oh, I don't know, because if you look at the panels below that, there's somebody in a hoodie that looks very mysterious and has a pointy nose and like kind of like reddish lips, it looks like. That could be the Joker.
That's what I'm saying. So that's not the
fetish
not
guy.
the fetish dude. Like, because the panels below shows that she goes walking off somewhere, and then that guy bumps into her, and it looks like the very iconic like pointy nose and full lips. Because of black and white, you don't know if it's red or not, but they're full lips. Sure. And so I was like, oh, that's got to be the Joker. That's got to be. Yeah, so he was there, like, listening to that conversation. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. And then it goes to the final panel to where they are discussing the crime scene, or there's a new crime scene, right? Like, because she says, give me the address, I'm on my way. And so the detective that was talking shit earlier is like, is this rookie puking over there? Get him out of this goddamn crime scene. So apparently they're seeing something very, like, sadistic or crazy or just something insane. And this was my only issue with the book. The book just ends here. Like, it doesn't show us the crime scene. It doesn't show us anything.
Yeah, she describes like, oh, they can't handle this, and you don't normally see this kind of messed up, whatever. And then you're like, okay, what is it? And it's credits. Yeah, it's the end credits. Yeah, you're like, what the fuck? Yeah,
you don't see shit. You just get the name of Cami Garcia. Shout out Garcia. But she wrote an amazing book. And then we got the artist, which is Miko Shuzan.
Miko Suyan, and Mike Mayhew. Mike Mayhew is the like super hyper realistic art.
Yeah. So that stuff's really cool. And so I enjoyed the story. I just didn't like the way it ended so abruptly, because like had that been a final page turn and it was this crazy sadistic piece of art, I would have been like, oh shit. But I just feel like they tightened the hell out of this. They just fucking ended it with Dick Grayson looking into the, being controlled by what's-his-face. And we have to wait for season 2.
Yeah,
so,
basically.
like, that's basically how I felt like this ended. I love the concept of this book because it's so good to see. I've always said I've wanted a serious Harley at some point because, again, another book we didn't talk about that came out this week was Harley and Ivy, and it's just a little too goofy for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just too much out there. Like, I feel like they treat Harley, and again, she's not in continuity. Like, that's the majority of her stuff that is written is not in continuity. So, and it sucks because that's supposed to be tied into Heroes in Crisis, but it seems so out there that I don't even consider it part of Heroes in Crisis. So I'm just like, it's just another Harley book. And because it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with that at all. But anyways, in this Elseworld story, it's nice to see a badass, serious Harley that isn't somebody that's been abused by the Joker or that has been taken over by that or is like goofy and funny. I love that Harley. I've always loved that Harley, and I will always love that Harley. But it's nice to see this different, just version of Harley.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe she'll end up being with the Joker at the end. We don't know that. That's the mystery that we'll solve here. Maybe she'll end up killing the Joker at the end. We don't know, but I am hella intrigued by this. And if you want that like lovey-dovey Harley stuff, they have the Harleen book that we reviewed like 2 weeks ago. And so there's 2 solid Black Label Harley books that are out right now. And
that's the thing. If you're a fan of Harley Quinn, now is the time, because the way these Black Label books work is one every other month. They did this perfectly to where there's a Harleen and a Harley book, and it's going to come out every single month for you guys who are Harley fans. For the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for the next 6 months, you're going to have one Harley book on Black Label every single month.
Yeah, so that'll carry you all the way to Birds of Prey if you're waiting to see that movie. You'll have plenty of Harley stuff going on there. And then if they're still doing the Harley regular book that comes out, bi-weekly or is it monthly?
I believe it's
either
monthly.
way. Yeah, but you still have the Poison Ivy Harley book. So there's a lot of Harley for you out there if you want to get your Harley. But if you want some serious stories, because maybe you're in a Joker funk right now and you just want to see serious stuff, then get these Black Label books.
This is definitely a book for you.
Yeah, they're more mature. So if you don't want the goofy stuff, but you still love these characters, Black Label is definitely for you. And they're going to start pumping these things out a lot. And a lot of books that you haven't read or you don't even know about are more than likely going to be made again in Black Label, which we were talking about this earlier. I believe they're going to be re-releasing Lieber Mayhew's Luthor, which is a more serious take on Lex Luthor. This is the same creative team that did Batman Damned, which was on Black Label. More than likely, their older stuff like Batman Noel and Batman and Joker will probably get released on Black Label. So if you are somebody that wants more serious content, definitely DC Black Label is for you if you're trying to get into just something to read. And it won't cost you a lot because they only come out once a month.
Yeah.
So, it won't break the bank. But yeah, that is our top 5 books that we talked about. Again, there was a lot going on this week with Batman Universe stuff. The movie stuff was quiet. There wasn't really a lot going on there. We talked about Joker in that other podcast, so if you haven't watched that, definitely go check it out. But Clay, do you have any last minute thoughts? Do you have any last minute thoughts on Joker before we get out of here? If you have anything else, because we saw it again.
Yeah, we saw it again. I honestly, I think I'm okay with everything that I said in that first reaction, just because that was oh man, fresh thoughts and everything else. The one thing that I told you at work is I'm not super thrilled that they actually put the super rats into the actual movie. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, everything was great still. I love that movie. I want to see it.
Yeah, it was great.
We plan on seeing it in 35 millimeter. It's just a matter of finding the time to.
Yeah, well, the same thing is we got to see how long that 35 millimeter is going to be showing. So we might have to see it sooner than we would want to. So, but yeah, so the only thing I have to add is I mentioned it in the review. I didn't really care for the Bruce Wayne thing that happens at the end of the movie. Second time around didn't bother me as much. So, you know what? I'm kind of cool with it. But yeah, the movie's great. I highly suggest anybody to go watch that. And if you want to read stuff that's similar to that, go read DC Black Label. But that's going to be it, ladies and gents. Clay, you got any final words on anything? You good?
Nope, I'm good. If you guys want to follow me, you can follow me at FanboyClay on Instagram and Twitter. And my podcast is at Fanboy Comics Pod and CB_Legion.
Yep, definitely check that out. I do have his Instagram and Twitter stuff in the links or in the bios, whatever you call them here on the podcast stuff. So the descriptions, go check that out. But yes, as always, ladies and gentlemen, he is Fanboy Clay. I am your host, Juice Wayne. Remember, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself something about my daily dose of juice. See you guys next time.
I think the girls with their nails done now.